is worldview. Now, security during the campaign period is one of the key concerns for authorities as Kenya heads to the elections. The religious community is on record cautioning the political class against inflaming the passions of Kenyans through careless rhetoric during campaign rallies. But also, there has been a new twist with the opposition NASA claiming that security agents were being trained to rig the August vote. In studio to discuss these issues around the election, security expert Richard Tuta. Thank you, sir, for joining me in the studio this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, from where you sit, how would you rate our security situation today, just barely 40 days to the election?
I will say you can look at it from, if you ask me from a scale of 1 to 10, I think so far we are not doing badly. We can give ourselves 6. 6 is not bad. All right. 6 out of 10.
All right.
Yes.
Let's talk about what has been making headlines over the past few days, and that is, from the campaign trail, something that the National Super Alliance presidential candidate Raila Odinga did say the other day, accusing Jubilee of saying that the army was being used. There was some reports of training happening here in Nairobi for the election, but the NASA brigade saying that this is trying to use, or an attempt to use, the military to rig the elections. What is your take on such utterances?
Let us first give him the benefit of doubt.
Okay.
Because from where he sits, there is something we call in security, we call it that he is allowed to think as, we call it red teaming. He is allowed to think from a perspective that suppose he is the one who is the president currently, what can he do? So the moment he thinks from that perspective, he is allowed for his opinion. But what the army and the police generally are doing is not something new in the world. I will explain that from 1941, British itself established the SAS, that which people normally call the Special Air Service. Right. And a very good example on how the police and the army can work in a complementary way was to be experienced in the year 1980 during the Iranian embassy. The Iranian embassy crisis, the operation that is normally referred to as the Operation Nimrod, whereby the army had to come in and to supplement the police in its work. Right. So what currently the police and the army are doing is not something new. Remember, these are what was passed in the Constitution in 2010, all right, and also actualized by an Act of Parliament in 2012.
But isn't taking care of security during the elections here inside the country shouldn't it be the mandate of the National Police Service?
If you look at the total number of the police that as a country there is vis-a-vis the workload on that day, let us not shy away from saying that the police itself, and remember, apart from that election happening on that day, there will be so many other things that will be happening. We cannot say, the police cannot say that they will have to talk with the criminals and to agree that because this day is an election day, allow us today to focus all our attention on elections, then maybe you can start now continuing with your criminal activities the next day. So there must be a way on which, and I like the way the police and the army are doing, is that they are now able to think on a probabilistic manner that, yes, suppose it happens this way. Right. The only problem we have as a country is we are used to playing what we call political balls with matters pertaining to national security.
Wouldn't including or using the military cause a bit of anxiety among Kenyans? And what about those who will say that for you to, order or direct the army to work inside the borders, you need Parliament to authorize that? What's your take on that?
If you look at the Kenya Defence Forces Act of 2012, it talks of that in case there is an emergency or a disaster, you don't need to request Parliament. You don't need, there is nowhere within that act it talks of. It does not also talk of, and it does not talk of the aspect that if you deploy the army to work under or to work in cooperation with the police, it does not require the clearance of Parliament. And remember, what may happen on that particular day is that the National Security Council can order army to be deployed to work in a complementary manner with the police. And when they work in a complementary manner with the police, now they become under the Inspector General. They are no longer under the Chief of the Defense Forces. They are command and control now. The Inspector General now takes over the command and control. But when it is an issue that the army now is required to go and restore peace in any part of this country, that is when now there is that it's required of Parliament to approve. But in this case, remember,
All right.
what is happening currently, remember, a lot of things is shifting in the
All
world.
right, just hold that thought, Tuta. We'll continue that conversation. We're taking a quick commercial break right now. Remember, we are keeping an eye on what has been happening. Of course, we have Chris Tairo keeping an eye on the Jubilee campaign trail in the county of Kirinyaga, as well as Muremi Mwangi, who is in Narok. We shall be going back to them to find out what's happening there. We are back shortly after this quick commercial.